see you again.
Well, it's great. Great to be here. I'm just grateful.
Yeah, me too. It's obviously awesome to see you here in my country. I love how I just owned my country. Yeah, in the U.S. instead of in London, because last time we were doing a face-to-face, we were in London, right?
Yeah. It's just full circle.
What brought you to the United States?
Well, there's so many deep divers out here. And California is just about a lot of health, wellness. And for me, it's just fun just to meet people. You've been to London.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's like.
Yes.
So I need to be near the ocean a lot.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, what I wanted to talk about today, I think, with you, was this, what I'm noticing a lot of lately is that the world right now feels really unstable to people. And when the world goes into a state of instability, people start to feel really afraid. So it creates a kind of emotional inflammation. The way that I like to describe it is it's almost like people are kind of like pufferfish. They're sort of walking around in a state of defense against each other. And not just against people, against ideas as well. And so what I'm watching in the spiritual community specifically is a real, I guess, lack of self-trust in people and a state of reactivity against what they perceive to be as a threat. And a lot of that is directed at each other, at alternative ideas. A lot of it's directed at, people like yourself and I as teachers, where it's sort of like, I don't know whether to trust this person or this thing, and so if I read any information that's contradictory to the person or to the ideas, now suddenly I am thrown into a state of crisis, because, like, who do I believe? Is this person totally a fraud? Are they horrible? Is what they're saying totally not true based off of all this information? And so people are going into this kind of defensive crisis. So I was wondering, first off, whether you've been noticing the same thing.
Definitely. I've been noticing it all along. Whenever you put yourself out there, you're literally the sacrificial lamb.
Yep.
That's why anyone that's doing this work, you got to be so brave. Like, I remember back in 2013, I was just like, gosh, Teal can do this every week, because it's not easy. There's a reason why a lot of people don't want to share anything, because of the backlash. A lot of people, they delve into your personal life. And I think that's why a lot of us who are doing this work, you want to remind people that I'm not a saint. Expect a scandal every week. Because the more you kind of show yourself to be perfected, then that's when people start to dig up dirt. It's like someone like Russell Brand, who's kind of crazy anyway. He's amazing, but it's like you kind of expect that. So that's what I always do. I always try and infuse a lot of humor in it. Don't expect perfection from me at all.
I say the same thing, but it doesn't seem to change the way that people react. It's almost like there's such an expectation of spiritual teachers that they be the absolute image of perfection, that if anything is presented that is contrary to that perfectionistic ideal, now suddenly they have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's kind of like, well, if there's one defect that this person shows, then what else is defective about what they've said?
Right.
So what I would really love is if people actually learned discernment for themselves. I feel like that's where we're headed in the spiritual field. And I feel like the spiritual revolution that's happening right now is that gurus are essentially coming off of their pedestal. Because what we recognized as teachers is for thousands of years we've been doing that. We've been doing the pedestal thing. So follow us, listen to what we say, and if you just practice this crap, you're going to finally figure out how to live life, right? But now it's kind of like we're coming off the pedestals because we're seeing how much damage that has done.
Yes.
So what kind of damage have you perceived that the pedestal effect does to people?
Well, I see a lot of times people, they feel threatened if they're not living that lifestyle. That's why a lot of the times when I make videos, I always do short videos. Sometimes I do videos on the beach, sometimes with other people. So I'm not kind of just doing one style of videos. I think that's where a lot of people fall into problems. If you're just doing a video every week or twice a week and it's in a set way, because your amazing website, I'm reading your amazing articles. I'm like, gosh, I want to see Teal doing that on YouTube.
Okay.
And a lot of the times that's probably will help people a lot more to have inner discernment. And that's what helps me, because a lot of people know, okay, Ralph is going to say anything. That's what you've got to expect. I could talk about grapes, or I could talk about making money, or I can talk about anything. because I'm showing people different sides of myself every single day.
Yeah, I can tell. I can see that about you.
What do you think the hardest challenge you face right now? Because you've been doing it for so long. Do you think that you've reached a point where you're trying to find a new path in what you're doing? Because you're an artist, and artists always are on the next level, just change the whole game completely.
I can feel that might be something that comes up. But the hardest thing for me right now with my career is the fact that, like, I've gotten to a pinnacle point in my career, especially because of how revolutionary I tend to be in my ideals. And my decision, of course, to put my entire private life out in the public eye, where the level of controversy that I've got going is so high that we're dealing with serious security risks at every event that I go to. We're dealing with death threats. We're dealing with, like, public slander, just the crazy amounts of it, to the degree that a lot of people in this business are real scared to touch me. They're like, well, I don't know if I want to go near the Teal thing, because by virtue of association, we're either going to be exalted or condemned. So it's that polarization that really I struggle with, and of course trying to find the point of attraction within me for the amount of hatred that I'm facing right now in the world. And
right.
Because it's really hard, like you said earlier, it's really, really hard, is to basically to be so excited about this thing you're going to create and to feel like you're giving such a great thing to the world and to have it just slaughtered.
Right.
That was a wonderful form of attraction moment. I don't command reality.
Yeah. How did that happen?
We'll keep that in.
We're gonna keep that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, yeah, so like to have it just sort of slaughtered, is, I almost feel like there's an aspect of me that feels like a little kid who's drawn a picture, and I'm super excited to show people that picture, so I run up on stage and go like this, and then people throw tomatoes and shoot holes through it, and I'm like, oh my god, like, what just happened?
Right.
So it's very hard to feel the same level of confidence when that continues to happen. And you can feel yourself, because I mean, when people like us get in the flow, that can't be interrupted by the what ifs.
Yeah.
That's where it leads to sort of manipulation. I'm going to basically structure this so that it's accepted the perfect way that I want to, and structure it so that I get the reaction I want, is a lot more of an inhibited process than the free flow of just plain channeling. So the real struggle for me is, how do I keep it pure channeling and not get tied up in this panic about, oh, the minute I say that, they're going to take it this way, so I have to cover all my bases, and then it becomes more of a impure art form.
Right, right. It's been challenging for me as well, but I learned a secret that you don't want to get stuck on the masterpiece. And I realized when I was putting out videos, like sometimes once a week or whatever, it would make people would just hang on the last video I've done. So I realized when I was releasing a lot of videos, whatever's on my mind, it's like, oh my gosh, people are seeing so many different sides. You know, so if you say something in one day, tomorrow you can say it and then go over it in people's minds. But if you kind of leave people hanging for a whole week, they're like, oh my gosh, Teal's saying this. And it's like, they take it completely out of context.
Oh
because,
my god, I'm easy to take out of context, yep.
Right, right.
Yes, for sure.
But as well, I think it's the whole getting more personal with people. That's what I always love to do sometimes. And that's why I think when you break it up, it allows people to almost say, okay, I can't just judge Teal for doing this because I'm seeing different sides of her. I think a lot of the traps we fall in is we just want to show the world one side of us sometimes. And that was my problem for a long time, until I realized, who cares? You see, I think it's the gurus and a lot of teachers, what they have to do is also learn from other people who are in the complete opposite spectrum. On YouTube, for example, you got people like Jenna Marbles, who's with her dogs, talking, and that's genius.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is genius. But what about fusing both worlds together with
I love the idea.
entertainment and you know, just helping people?
I love the idea.
So, because a lot of the times, whenever you're trying to help people, that's when people start judging you. It's the old story. When you don't want to help anybody, they love you for it. When you tell people, you know, just ruin your life, then they'll support you. But the moment you're trying to help people, then people say, oh, who are you? Have you ascended somewhere? And then they try and find out stuff about you. So I always say it helps when you can play yourself down.
That's what I've tried to do with my blogs, and it's having the opposite effect.
Right.
Like, literally, I put this myself out there with the vulnerability, and like, look, this is the story behind closed doors. which is no longer behind closed doors by virtue of exposing it. And it's almost like that's causing its own, this is not what I want, is to follow somebody who's got issues with X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And wow, I am like watching some serious reactivity. So what I wanted to talk to you about basically was, like, what would your advice be to the people who are on the other end wanting to learn from spiritual teachers? Like, I mean, because what I feel like is it's really super critical for people to develop discernment. What I usually talk about is the fact that I feel like today our modern spiritual practice needs to be about creating a religion built for one. So that you are essentially, you become your own guru, you become your own access to spiritual information, and you're sort of looking at the world as if Source, or whatever you want to call it, this united consciousness, is able to speak through anything and everything. And so you're just sort of watching out in the world for that message or that tool or that thing that benefits your life. So it's almost like if you can think of a spiritual practitioner as somebody who has a toolbox, and you want to fill that toolbox with all the tools that work for you specifically. And what works for one person is going to be different than what works for another person. So essentially all somebody like you or I are as a spiritual teacher, in terms of function in the world, is somebody who sells a lot of tools. Yeah. And so what if we could approach everything and anyone as if you're looking for that one tool that works, as opposed to, condemning the person who's selling the tools or making it about the person who sells the tools. Right. I think it's a lot safer too, because quite frankly, I mean, look how many scandals have happened over the last thousands of years with people who are in positions of spiritual authority. Yes. It would be better, I feel like, if people could kind of learn how to separate out the baby with the bathwater and be like, you know what, if this aspect of their personal life helps me, let's pretend it's my blog in this case, right? Right. Or those videos where you're showing people what you do just on a normal day, like, look, I'm on the beach today. If that helps that person, then that's a tool that assists them. If that doesn't help another person, they can set that aside and look for another aspect of the tools in either of our repertoire and use that. Right. So, I mean, it's an interesting way of looking at the world, because we have the tendency to do black or white, right? People want to condemn or else exalt. Like, there's nothing in between. So it doesn't allow for the nuances that are a natural part of humanity. And whether we like to admit it or not, most people in the spiritual community don't want to admit they're human. It's like, no, we're just we're pretending to be human, but we're not really human. I would almost rather us say, no, we're both human and divine. Yeah. Definitely. I say, what helps me is saying, this is what's helped me along my journey. Yeah. A lot of the times, I mean, Infinite Waters is growing so much, and a lot of people always bring that up. Oh, it's like you're not telling me what to do. Yeah. I'm just explaining, this is what's helped me. So I think when you make it more of a narrative, it's a lot, people can kind of use more inner discernment. They're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to just judge them straight away. But as soon as you say, okay, this is what to do, boom, 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 without putting your own personal touch of story in it, then people might take it the wrong way. It's almost like a professor who's saying, do this, and they do it. It may not work for them. So they blame the professor. Mm-hmm. But you've got to put a massive disclaimer. This may not work for you. I'm not here to kind of change your life. I'm just sharing what's helped me along my journey. Because a lot of the times, people, they're very desperate for help. Oh, yeah. And sometimes that's where the pressure comes in. If it doesn't go right, then they look to the person who was giving them the advice in the first place. So you want to just say, massive disclaimer, this probably won't help. But it may. But I think as well, it's also, we've got to kind of remind people that this isn't the only guide for you. Oh. This is only a perspective. Yes. And that's why I always say that all the time, because otherwise people, they think, oh, she's figured it all out. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's a lot of craziness going on. So I think that's where people, they might start to judge people when they say, okay, you're talking about this, but why aren't you talking about what's actually happening in your life? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of teachers have to bring more out what's happening in their life. Yeah, I agree. To the public. I completely agree. Right. Like 100%. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. You got to talk about it, because like you were saying, should we talk about people who sometimes make videos? I've had videos made about me, and sometimes you don't always have to just go at them specifically, but you can always raise it up, in a way where you can talk about people who aren't supporting you, and then, bring it out there. Because at the end of the day,
it's a way of letting go of fear, you know, and realizing it's not that serious. People have been talking since the dawn of mankind about other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you honestly mean to tell me that, like, even you come out there with your public and personal life, people are, like, fine with it? Or do you still encounter the resistance?
I always encounter resistance. A lot of times because a lot of people, when I'm sharing videos, some people say, gosh, for instance, a lot of people say, gosh, Ralph is so friendly with the ladies. He's always saying infinite love and balance. And, you know, so a lot of the times, but that's always who I've been. You see, I mean, someone might say, okay, I haven't even had a lot of resistance. You see, even though a lot of people say, gosh, Ralph's always posting pictures on Facebook and stuff like that. And I've had those.
Well, you're pretty hard to hate, can I be honest?
Right. But, you know, there's always going to be something. I've had a lot of people who say, Ralph, I don't like your intro. Please stop saying, can I get a hello there? Because it's distracting me. Oh. Lots of people writing in that. But then lots of people saying, oh, I love it. So really, it's got to do with you. Yep. You know, I always say how people treat you or see you has nothing to do with you. It's got everything to do with them. But at the same time, it does definitely, like you said, we can't just stop worrying about what people think. It does affect us. So we have to really realize, okay, why? You know, a lot of the times it's because it's also a catalyst for our own growth.
Oh, exactly.
When someone says something and it stings, you're like, why did that sting so much? Mm-hmm. They hit somewhere.
Oh, yep.
And a lot of the times I always say you've got a lot of people around who are going to say certain things and it's going to trigger you when certain people say things and it doesn't. So it's up to us as well to kind of find, why did that trigger me?
Well, that was exactly the point I was going to bring up about discernment. I feel like actually our triggers present the greatest opportunity potentially for working with discernment, because it's like the second that hits, we have that opportunity. It's like a wide open door to try to figure out, like, what part of this is me and what part of this is the other person. Like, why is this? And that's, of course, about inner questioning.
Yeah.
Why is this bothering me so bad? What is it about me that this particular thing threatens? Like, what is it that I'm afraid of? All of those big questions. It's the only way we can really discern what is intuition versus what is our mind, and fear-based ego, of course, coming in and taking over the show, is to really confront the aspects that could potentially be ego. What about me and my identity, essentially, is this particular thing threatening? Then we can actually, it's almost like you're peeling the veneer off so that you can actually see the essence of what's underneath. It becomes very clear what to do or what not to do when you do something like that. But I feel like people are not taught to self-question.
Right.
We are basically raised thinking that what's normal is reactivity. So you get that trigger and instantly you do something as a result of it. You either reject the person, yell at the person. It's like it's some sort of an external action that is taken as a result of that trigger. Right.
And what would you say, you've been putting out yourself out there for so many years. Has every year become easier because you've got more confidence, or is it becoming more challenging as the bigger you're growing and stuff?
I noticed that it goes in waves.
Okay.
So, like, to begin, the first initial putting myself out there was terrifying. It was like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm really doing this. And then that was received well, and it went awesome. Then I encountered my first wave of, like, not everybody loves teal. And when I, of course, ran up against that pushed on all of my deep wounds of being rejected and ostracized as a kid and, like, all that kind of stuff. And so I had to deal with that, which was not easy. And then I kind of broke through that. And I say basically getting famous is pretty much the best way to desensitize yourself to being hated, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, like, you sort of struggle with it, and then you either die because of it, or you just sort of become used to it. So I'm becoming used to it, but as I get bigger, it seems like the waves get bigger also. And so, like, recently I've been hit with a really big one, like super big one, where some of the hatred is coming from people who were very, very close to me. Right. And so it's that level of betrayal, essentially, which has been coming up big time, and it's been more difficult for me than any of the rest of it.
Right.
So it's the wave effect, and I'm hoping that one day the waves, you know, I kind of rise above the waves, so that the waves don't really impact me on an emotional level, impact my career on an emotional level, but we shall see.
Well, that's another thing, because YouTube is one of the biggest websites in the world, and I always look at other people's YouTube channels, some of the really popular ones, and they're always collaborating with each other.
Yeah.
So that unity really helps people to use in their discernment. Say, oh, wait a minute, Teal's with Ralph, and the other person who's doing YouTube as well. You're working together. People are seeing the unity, and now it's like, oh my gosh, it's all coming together. But I think a lot of us, we're always doing separate things too much. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, they don't see enough unity. So then it's...
I like the idea.
Yeah.
It's hard for artists to collaborate. Did you know that?
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It is hard. But we did it 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We've been doing it. And it's so important because people love when we connect. We're doing the same thing in different ways. But it's so important for people to see unity. I always say a great thing is that we've never gone at each other. I think that's the biggest.
What, like you've given me occasion?
Right. You know, well, a lot of the times it can happen because sometimes the ego can creep in, and even though people are doing the same things, there's a lot of slander. And I think what we've done is amazing because I'm always watching your videos, I'm sharing your videos, and it's like, why is it the same way? I think people just have to show that even more, because that way then people start to see, oh my god, it's like a cross audience.
I like that.
And people start to say, oh my gosh. And then they begin to have a wider perspective.
So what? Tell me about you using discernment in your life.
Well, a lot of the times I've always been a free being. Like race doesn't exist to me, gender doesn't exist to me. All of these things are illusions. That's why I connect with so many people, because I always make sure I remind them that. So because of that, the people I attract to me are very open people. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's infinite waters, because it's infinite. It's all in the name. We don't have any separation. So a lot of the times as well, that's why I don't even dislike anybody's videos. Because even if I don't agree with it, I have no business disliking it. Mm-hmm. For me, it's not going to serve me, you see. So a lot of the times I listen to other people who I don't even agree with, just to see where they're coming from, and then realize, okay, even though I don't like this, it shows that I've moved past that level.
So what enables you, so that's a good question for the people who are watching, what enables you to watch somebody who is, let's say, they're a gray area people, there are some concepts they present that you agree with and some that you don't agree with. Like what do you do with that? Because some people who are stuck in the kind of black and white thinking have a very difficult time, with that. They have a very difficult time, say, watching something that they disagree with and not making it discredit the totality of someone.
Right.
So how do you do that practically? Do you even know how you do that?
Well, it's difficult. I've never been one to just get into hating someone for the sake of hating someone, but a lot of people do. I always say there's polarity in the universe for balance, and that's why you need it. Not everyone will ever love you. A lot of people don't like strawberries, even though you love them. Mm-hmm. So it's a case where I kind of realize it's okay if people don't like infinite waters. I just don't focus on that. And if I'm watching someone, this is my vibration. I'm just very casual about it and say, oh, okay.
Would you say that you're a person who has a lot of internal wounds or no?
Definitely. Really? I would say I'm always working on it every day. The deeper you dive, the deeper it gets. And that's why I realize everybody has it. Because being on planet Earth is not easy at all. We signed up for the hardest lessons of all in the universe, to come to a planet where children are just born and dumped here. Mm-hmm. And there's no guide, there's no manual. So I always say everyone is pretty much going through the same thing. So that's why, by me doing it day in, day out, I'm kind of discovering more, and like you said, more tools.
How do you not get hurt by people?
That's a great one. I have a lot of times where it does hit. Sometimes people say things and I was like, oh my gosh. But I always realize I have to go out every day and say, can I get a hello? That you've got to say something that's going to bring the energy up in what you do. Because sometimes whenever even we're creating, we're so serious all the time. Yep. We forget to fuse some humor in it, and you've got to laugh at yourself and the audience. You see, and that's why a lot of us, I laugh a lot. I always make sure I'm having fun when I'm creating videos. I don't want to just give people information. It's boring. It's not artistic for me. I've got to get a kick out of it, and also a kick out of myself. Sometimes I make videos and it's all shady. Sometimes like, oh my gosh, who cares? And that's why I moved into the one take, where there's no cuts.
I noticed that you do that, yeah.
Right. So a lot of the times as well, it's more liberating for myself. If someone says, oh, I don't like it, I don't care, because tomorrow I'm already on to another one. We've got a lot of stuff to do out here.
Yeah.
There's no time to be caught up. We're already moving so fast. I think a lot of people get hurt because, once again, they're still polishing the masterpiece. They say, oh, I've created this great work. Then you're stuck. Where else are you going to go? Like, there is no perfection for me at all. Every day it's just the same. Like, I'm just renewing it. I don't say, oh, that's the best video. I don't care about a video. I'm already on to another one, and then another one.
Have you ever explained this to somebody before?
Well, I share some of it in my videos. But that's the biggest trap a lot of people face with getting hurt, is that they put a masterpiece out into the world. It's like, your art is amazing. You've spent hours, days, months on it. That if someone says, oh, I don't like that color, you should have made it yellow.
Yep.
What? Do you know how long it took me to draw this? So a lot of the times, that's why you've got to almost create effortlessly.
Yep.
Where you just create your signature, you do it for yourself. But I always say, once you own your weirdness, you got to prove it works. Teal, you've connected with so many people that it's just proof that more people are rooting for you than against you. So you got to look for the proof. Is what you're doing, is it connecting with a lot of people? Is it changing people's lives? Yes. So once you've seen the proof, then just look more for the proof. The numbers don't lie.
You spend a great deal more time in light than shadow, don't you?
Yeah, that's how I am.
I feel like that is what makes you and I actually such an interesting, like, ebony and ivory, because but it's reversed, because it's sort of like, I feel like when you're faced with a problem, you tend to, like, go that way, and I tend to go that way. And it's like, we both arrive at the same place.
Right.
You know? So, like, you know, when I'm facing somebody who's dealing with hatred, like, I feel like what you do is kind of open them up to, like, the light, and to the reality that, like, this is an illusion, there is no such thing as whatever this, you know, this person that you're hating, let's look at the illusion, because I'm going to show you the light of your actual consciousness. And what I tend to do is to be like, okay, let's dive into the hatred as deep as we can go.
Right.
And then, like, it's almost like the bottom drops out after a while, diving into that kind of stuff, and then you end up on the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, I really feel like that when I talk to you, that we are approaching an angle, like, from two completely different angles, and we always arrive at the same place. Do you ever feel that way around me, or no?
Definitely. I noticed when I used to watch your videos, and still do, you dive so deep into it, but sometimes in the other directions I do. Yeah. But we all end up at the same place. You see? And it's amazing that way.
I'd almost love to have somebody in between us so we could just go at them from two angles.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be good.
Well, that's why it's so important what we're doing now, and collaborating and showing the world unity. That's what people are after. It's like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, two come together, they talk it out, and that's what the world wants to see.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people who are kind of judging us, when they see that, they're like, oh, well, I like Infinite Wars, or I like Teal. It's like they're split. Mm-hmm. So they got to have a wider perspective.
Okay, something that I watched that's a real issue for me is that in the spiritual field, what we're looking to do, so many of us that are practicing, is to get out into these bigger, like, happier, joyous places. And so what happens when someone like you or I, or the thousands of spiritual teachers that came before us, when we hand people these spiritual truths, which are truths that exist in a, let's say, 7th and plus dimensional level, things like we are all one. When from the 3rd dimensional perception, that is absolutely not the case. Right. Is that what people tend to do is to hold on to those concepts for dear life, not be able to look at anything in them that contradicts those truths. And so when they encounter illusion, or when they encounter fear or anger or any of those, shall we say, unacceptable places, they tend to bypass. I mean, you're familiar with spiritual bypass,
right?
Correct? So what would you say about, like, helping people understand the difference between when they're spiritually bypassing and when they're genuinely positively focusing, for example?
Right. Well, a lot of us, we like to pick and choose when it suits us. Mm-hmm. You see, and we always do that, especially in the spiritual community. Lots of people are always doing it. Sometimes people say, well, I'm at this job and everything happens for a reason. You don't have to be there at all.
Yep.
You see, so I think as well, it's just like the great psychologist Fritz Perls said, take 100% responsibility. And a lot of the times as well, there is no excuse sometimes just by labeling yourself to do a certain thing. You see, like you said, amazing quote, like authenticity is not just positive. It's also negative. I saw it on Tumblr. Great job. Right? So that's so true as well. And that's why I love what you do with the shadow work and everything as well. Because a lot of us, we're always just focusing on the positive. Something has just happened to you and you're like, oh, just don't worry about it. It's all part of the divine order. You're like, no, it's not. It's definitely not. Something has gone wrong. So I think it's about honesty and realizing there are certain things that you don't understand or comprehend, and that's okay. A lot of people in this spiritual community and people at large, we never like to say we don't know. That's scary to us.
It's tormenting.
It's tormenting. We never like to say, oh, what happened? But we always think we have an answer, which can also be detrimental in the long run.
I agree.
What do you think about it?
What do I think about people saying I don't know? It should happen more often.
Right.
But it's threatening when you're in a position of authority to basically have to say that to people, especially when they're all looking to you to lead them.
Right. How do you deal with it?
How do I deal with it? I usually say I don't know, but then I, sit under the covers and I'm like, why am I in this career? Maybe I should quit. I go into the shadow, by the way. I'm the kind of person who, I don't just rise above it all. I'm the kind of person that's like, woo, So I'll go down into I should quit my job. I don't even know why I'm here. Why am I telling other people how to live my life? I can't even live my life.
Right.
And then it's somewhere down there's a kind of transformation that happens, and then a realization. And I'll be back on cloud nine again with inspiration, and then the next thing happens.
And I've seen it, your earlier videos. A lot of it was more metaphysical.
Yes.
And those are, those are kickstarted everything. But then I saw you delve more into human problems. Was that a conscious choice? Because you were diving into crystals and
I stopped being interested.
Okay. Right.
When I first started this career, what it was is I was surprised that people didn't know some of the things that I just knew about the universe. It's wait, really? You don't know this about the universe at large? For an extrasensory, it's I'm exposed to a whole range of things that the average person doesn't see. So I was like, oh, this is great. I can just tell them about all these subjects that are second nature to me. But my own inspiration started to be about all right, how do you actually live here on planet Earth?
Right.
Because, regardless of whether you know all this information about crystals or know all this information about the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension, how do you actually practically work with grief? Because that's the kind of stuff that traps us.
Yeah.
And when I looked at the world, because as a teacher, you're basically looking at the world and you're looking at needs. And when I want to teach what the need is. And when I'm looking in the world and looking at what's causing war and causing struggle and causing pain, causing suffering here, it's easy. Most of it's the emotional system, our lack of understanding about it, and our inability to be able to self-reflect. And so I was like, okay, that's my area of interest. How do you take a physical human and get them to be introspective enough that they can come out of these triggers so as to not cause absolute havoc to themselves and everyone around them? Now, better question, how the hell do I do that? Because that's where, most of your inspiration stems from your own life. Nobody wants to admit this, by the way, but I'm just going to admit to you, okay? Most of the spiritual teachers, if not all of us, draw our inspiration from what we are struggling with the most. So if you have issues with relationships, it's almost wow, let me figure my way out of this. And then when you kind of start the exploration, you come to insights, and then those insights then get shared. So,
right.
So yeah, I struggle the most with emotions.
Right.
Just to be honest.
Well, same as me, and I think so many people do. Yeah. And I feel that's why you got to always remind yourself how brave you are for even doing this. Because what you're doing and what I'm doing, we're actually talking about it. A lot of people who do art, they make songs about it, where they do it in a very kind of subtle way. But we're actually saying it, which takes even more courage.
It takes a hell of a lot of courage.
You see, and
they use it against you later.
And they use it against you. Everything you say, people use it as ammo.
Yep.
But that's why it's so important just to, once again, look for the proof. Look for and focus on all the people that support you. And people when we connect, when we create, that's the most important thing. Because I always say, if no one's talking about you, well, then you're not doing anything. You see, because when you're just starting out on YouTube, nobody cares. Yeah. But as soon as Teal's been doing this, doing workshops in Australia, what? People get nosy and they try to look for something they can say about you.
There's plenty to say.
And there's so much to say. And a lot of people, they take time to make videos and they take time to break it down. And sometimes they've got so much anger in their voice that it's captivating for people to listen to because they put on a show. And I always say that it's really up to the listeners to decide.
Yep.
We haven't even got control over that.
No, we have none.
So
Yep.
a lot of the times you just got to let it float in the ocean and see what happens.
You know, that's an interesting point that you brought up, because when I watch it applies to discernment again. What I notice a lot is that people who are not trusting themselves, right? It's not about trust yourself, and if you trusted yourself, you'd love Ralph, or trust yourself, and if you trusted yourself, you'd love Teal. It's literally just like, look, trust yourself and just let whatever the answer that comes be the answer that's right for you. When people watch things like that, you know, slander articles or hate videos, the general energy of those types of videos, which is hatred usually, makes people feel really uncomfortable inside. If it's a slander article written about a person, they then associate the way they feel reading it with the person that they're reading about.
Yes.
And they equate it to each other. And so it's like, oh wow, that must be the essence of this person.
Yes, definitely.
So that's an interesting little side note.
But as well, a lot of the times, the age we're in now, a lot of people don't want to feel that way. You see, it doesn't feel good when you're looking at and trying to break someone down. Even when you're watching it, like, you can't like watch it without feeling negative.
Yeah.
So you have to experience negative. That's why, once again, it's a conscious choice someone has to make. And a lot of people who watch those kind of videos on and on, their own life is spiraling.
Oh yeah, completely. So like, I mean, it's a good thing as it applies to discernment. It's an interesting
Right.
thing. When I'm looking at this thing, or when I'm watching this person, how does it make me feel? Is a good thing to ask yourself, because I mean that kind of is your tell. Is this bringing me up or is this bringing me down?
Yeah.
But then how do we? This is the problem. It's like, how do you do that, but then not go into bypassing? Because like it's real easy. It's not comfortable to focus on the stuff, you know, that scares you.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
So what is the difference? I mean, can you discern a difference between this thing that is uncomfortable still feels good for me to do because I can feel that my growth pattern is there, or this thing that feels uncomfortable also feels super negative?
Right. Well, I feel you have to sit with it. You see, there's nothing bad inherently about someone making a slander video about someone. It's just free speech. And you should be able to watch it. But if you feel a certain way, once again, it's definitely rattled some bones within you. You're definitely like, oh my gosh, so it's good. They've given you something to think about, which you may not have thought about before. But I always say, like we said, once you expose your dirty laundry, it shouldn't be new news. It should be old news. Oh, you didn't know that? Or what the hell are you talking about? You see? We don't have to really defend ourselves, which is where we get also caught up. We get caught in the trap.
Yeah.
Someone says, okay, Teal is like this, and then Teal says, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Then once again you fall into the trap.
Yep.
And you've given that person even more food.
Yeah, so that's what's good about becoming famous. If you run into
Right,
enough
right.
people who are hating you, like, do you know how much you have to do that?
Right.
It's like, I can't tell you how many times a day I've run up against something like that where it's like a whole thing and I can feel the defensiveness and I'm like, that's not true at all! And then I'm like, okay, what in me is getting triggered right now? Like, what is this a threat to? Dropping into the feeling, like, where did that original wound come from? Like, obviously there's an insecurity in me. That is
Right.
something that's accurate, by the way. The fact that, like, if something really bothers you, there's always some sort of insecurity.
Yeah, I think it hurts the most, I think, when it's someone who is on the same level as you.
Oh,
Who is doing the exact same. Maybe if it's another author or it's someone like,
oh,
if I was to make a video about you and say, oh my
I would
gosh,
die.
Teal
Please
is
never do that, please.
crazy and
Don't do
you
it.
know, and all of these things, and you know, if you made one about me, I was like, oh my goodness,
I would die.
You know, and that's where I think it really hurts the most. If it's someone who's just out of the woodworks, you know, I always look at other people's profiles. Who is this person? What are you doing? So I think it's as well, you've also got to, you know, take in discernment for that person. Say, okay, I'm not going to judge them because I can see that they just want to make a name for themselves, which is the oldest trick in the book. Talk about someone who's already out there and then, oh my gosh, now they'll focus on you. But if it's someone who has nothing to lose and they're talking about you, you're like, huh? Where did that come from? And then I think that's the hardest part. But have you dealt with that?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my god, like a hell of
Right.
a lot, in fact. But
So how do you deal with it? What's helped you really as a toolkit?
realizing that my current pain is not current pain.
Right.
Because, I mean, this is the thing. If your mind was everything on this earth, then you could talk yourself out of a problem immediately. Like, if my mind was the only thing that was dealing with an issue, I could instantly feel better. And this is the issue that we've got is that even somebody, like you or I, who come in with all of this information, universal information, sometimes it is not enough to talk you out of the emotional reactivity that you feel.
Yeah.
So when I started to really dive into this, I realized that my current upsets are always linked to something that I didn't have the capacity to deal with earlier. So, for example, recently, actually, I had a fellow spiritual teacher come out violently against me, and not only that, ask all of her followers, in fact, to put a stop to me, which presented some serious issues for my career. But I went into it that, like, why is this hurting me so bad thing? And I was right back to my childhood, growing up in a town where I was not my family was not the same religion as everybody else in the town. And so the adults in that particular environment were always focusing on me as if something was really wrong. They didn't want me influencing their kids. And it was that wound.
Right.
And so rather than making it about that woman in the current time, which it wasn't, I made my healing be about this child and my childhood experience relative to the LDS community, which was the one that had done so much damage with me as a kid. And I've noticed that when I healed that inner child aspect of me, the reactivity it wasn't there anymore. It was like I could look at the situation and not really feel as damaged by it.
Right. Well, that's so important. I feel what you've done is phenomenal, because there are lots of spiritual teachers who aren't on YouTube, but they've got a following, but they're not on the internet. And you're on the internet, which is the hardest thing to do in the world, especially on YouTube, where people can hit dislike, comment, and then hide behind a blank avatar.
Yeah.
And every day you're up for the judge. Every video you put out, someone you're in the gladiator arena.
Oh, I know. Sometimes I post things and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, if they take one word out of context, then
Yeah.
that's one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard, and that's, I think, the hardest part as well is when you're kind of reading the comments.
I don't do it.
Right.
But you can't avoid all of them. It's like
you can't avoid all of it. But I feel that's as well when what I've stepped into is what I call infinite creation, where I'm moving so fast that really and truly it's almost like I'm having a little play around. I'm just playing with it. So you're getting a kick out of it. I'm not trying to say, okay, this is for you, because by tomorrow we've already changed the whole scenery around. So, you're on what's happened last week. You see, so it's almost like never just giving something to somebody on a plate and saying, oh, here it is, all packaged up. Like, just make it whatever you want. And that way you almost free yourself from the pressure of trying to make someone's day and give them all of this great information, because a lot of the times people get stuck and then they equate you with the stuckness. Say, Teal, but step 5, I tried this, and they writing you emails and what the hell are you talking about? You see?
I've never had that.
Right.
I don't ever get those emails. I only ever get emails that are against me as a person.
Right.
Like, do you realize that nobody actually writes me articles to argue with my material?
Right, because your material is so sound. And I feel because it's so sound...
Oh, but I'm bummed. I would rather that, because at least I could be like, oh, we can have a constructive conversation.
Right.
It's like, Teal's an Illuminati, you're an Illuminati, I hope you realize you have a handler. Like, what am I supposed to do about that?
Right. Well, as well, I feel... Because when I read your articles and watch your videos, it's amazing. But I feel your articles have even more of Teal inside them.
Oh, yeah, because I'm a writer.
Because you're a writer, you see. And I feel a lot of people on the videos have to read your articles. Because I think your article is just like, wow, like so many different sides of you. And sometimes, you go into a casual talking when you're writing, and it's just like, you're at home with Teal, you see. And I feel like the videos are amazing as well, but I think it's so sound. It's so amazing, the information, that a lot of people, they're trying to look for something just to say, hey, no, this can't be right. And then they can't, so it's you. And then people, they go into the personal life.
Oh, there's enough there.
You see, they do the background checks. Who is this woman with all of this great information? And then once again, they can't separate the two.
Yep.
And then they say, oh, it's rubbish because da 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 da.
Do you think people should separate the two?
Well, I definitely feel that, definitely. You see, like Krishnamurti said, people, they praise the vase instead of seeing the water inside. You know, don't praise me, I'm just the vessel.
You do realize that within the spiritual community, this is an entire debate. Whether the information someone presents should be separate from the person themselves, or whether they are an extension of the very same thing. So like when some spiritual teachers say down in India is having sex with little kids,
Right.
like all of their information should be thrown out because it's coming through a vessel that's poisoned.
Right.
Or is it that even if this person, I mean, I'm getting aggressive because I'm using an extreme scenario because I feel like it's important. So like,
Yes.
or should this person who's having sex with little kids in India be separated out from the information that they brought in?
Right. That's a great question, and I feel a lot of the time it's always gonna be difficult. I always say, live by your words. That's the ultimate. It doesn't matter what you're talking about.
If only it was easy.
If only it was that easy, that would be, the whole world would be a magical place with unicorns around.
Yep.
But a lot of the times we have to realize I've never seen a perfect person,
Me neither.
and because of that, people have to take words as words
Yeah.
and people as people.
That's what I think. What I wish is that
Right.
people would actually try things on for size if it resonates with them. So you listen to something and you think, I might want to try that. Try it and see if it works for you. Like, and then let that be the tell.
Yeah, as well, I think the biggest problem as well with people sharing information is that they want authority.
Yep.
With authority comes credibility. With credibility becomes reputation.
Mm-hmm.
With reputation comes pressure.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you want to be taken seriously, you've got to play the role. But there's even so many people on YouTube, like the highest YouTuber, PewDiePie, who is just playing video games, you know, really crazy. So he can do whatever he wants. Nobody's going to bat an eyelid. You see?
Yeah.
Because he's just crazy to begin with. So I feel a lot of us who are sharing information, we've got to do something that can throw people off. Give people the unexpected. And then people, if they take the information, then they'll say, oh, okay, it's fine. You see? But when we try and just give perfect words and an image, then once again, people aren't still satisfied. So you might as well just be wild anyway.
Maybe our next video should be done with underwear on our head.
Yes, we should. That's a great start, you see. That's always, for me, I realized that everything, that's why I started to say, can I get a hello there? Because I realized, okay, if I say that, that's automatically going to free me from this perfect being. I'm already going in crazy. Expect craziness from the start and throughout the video. But a lot of people, they start when they're talking very serious.
Yeah,
very...
me, I start that way.
Right. Well, that's, I'm like, she's amazing. And it's like, a lot of people might see it and like, oh gosh, it's too perfect. You see Banksy and all of these artists, they always create art which is sometimes very rough.
I never figured crossing over to the video format. Like, to tell you the honest truth, that's what's interesting in what's happening today when you and I are talking. Because it's like, the blog is where I do that.
Right.
And then the videos is sort of like my crafted masterpiece,
Yeah.
basically. So it's like, I never really considered crossing over to the video format. Who knows what today's going to do? What if that happens? I don't even know what I would do, though. I don't think I've got a real handle on my humor yet. I want to do a funny video.
Yeah, well, a lot of the times I see you laughing in videos and I saw you did one with Blake and it's amazing because where you were laughing at, I think that was an old video, but you were laughing, doing something at the end which was completely different. And it's almost like, okay, whatever. And I feel that kind of relaxation that you experience also goes through the audience even more. And with relaxation, there's always a pre-pass. Like, oh, whatever. You see, and a lot of us, we're always caught up with people trying to get the message.
Yeah.
That it becomes sometimes quite stiff.
Yeah.
And therefore people receive it stiff. And therefore their judgments are stiff.
That's an interesting perspective on how the law of attraction applies to receiving information.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, because a lot of the times it's like, when you go in as an underdog, you'll always be fine. When you go in as someone who knows it all, then you already created criticism.
Yes.
From people.
Here's a question. Ready for a question?
Right.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
don't you think it's possible that going in always as the underdog could be a shadow aspect too, if someone that's not willing to take the pressure?
Definitely. It can always happen. You see, we can't really please everyone. That's one of the 4 agreements. It's never personal. And that's the biggest thing. But at the same time, it does feel personal. I always go on people's level of consciousness and as well what they're doing. And if a lot of people, they're just new to this journey, I expect a lot of criticism. A lot of the times you probably receive emails, oh my gosh, Teal, I really love you. Sorry, first I was kind of doubting you, but now... So you always get emails like that.
Do I get emails like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right. People who have turned around. First they were really against you, now they've taken time. So a lot of the times we're doing this every day.
Yeah.
A lot of people are living a busy lifestyle, we all are, but a lot of people are going to work and in a job they don't like, and
Yeah.
they come home and then you're saying these things.
Yep.
Till eventually it kicks home, it comes home to them and they're like, wow.
Yeah, I forget a lot of times, by the way, that people have like normal lives.
Yeah. We're doing this
All
day,
day.
all
All
day,
day,
all
yeah.
day. And a lot of us, we forget, a lot of people are just, they're touching the water, they're not going inside. And when you go inside the ocean, it's totally different.
Mm-hmm.
You're immersed in the salt water. You're moving around. A lot of people, they're afraid to swim. So they're going to judge the ocean, of course.
But both of us would educate them to swim.
Yes, yeah, we'll be diving deep and having fun. Right.
Well, thank you for visiting with me.
Thank you. I love you. I love everything you're doing. And really, it's all about unity right now. That's the biggest thing.
Well, it starts with us.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Love you guys.